Ladies and gentlemen, do not purchase Redfall. Not for $7 and absolutely not for $70. Do not go buy Game Pass just to play the game. If you already have Game Pass, then sure, fine, whatever, go ahead and play it. But do not spend money to play Redfall. It is not worth it. It is not finished. It needed at least one more year in development in order to even remotely come close to being a game that I would recommend for anybody to play. About the only saving grace with the game is the fact that you can play it with something like Game Pass, and it's only about 12 to 13 hours, so it's short and you can get it over quickly if for some reason you had to review it or if you just really want to play it. Now, with all that being said, the game has terrible performance issues, and initially I was incredibly excited for the game when it was first announced. I thought the premise had a lot of potential, but then, as you know, it had a huge game delay. It had the always online announcement, and then of course on the Xbox, the home console for this game, it can only run at 30 FPS, so we knew automatically there was going to be a huge problem with the game. And then on top of that, the embargo didn't even lift until launch day. That never looks good in any industry, whether if you're reviewing a TV show, a movie, or a video game. The embargo needs to go live sooner, and when it doesn't, that's a clear indication that the developers and publishers know the game is not ready and the game is not going to be good. And guess what? It's not good. Now, with all that being said, let's talk about the performance on the PC. My PC is running an AM5 platform with a 7800X 3D, 32 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM running at 6000 megahertz, and the NVIDIA RTX 4080. I like to play my games at native 4K, and I like to avoid upscaling when possible. Now, speaking of upscaling, this game defaults you to upscaling. So if you have an AMD GPU, it will automatically enable FSR. If you have an NVIDIA GPU, it will automatically enable DLSS and turn on performance mode. And if you have a 40 series GPU, it will go one step further and automatically enable frame generation. So that way, right out the gate, when you start the game on the ship or boat or whatever you're in, it will make you think, oh, wow, I'm getting amazing performance. This game is so well optimized. This game is running so incredibly well. But then you get into the open world and your frame rate starts to drop. And then you realize, oh man, I got all this stuff turned on. And so you start turning things off like DLSS, and you want to play things maybe natively like I do. And then you realize, okay, you know what? On average, we can get around 95 to 100 FPS, and that's pretty playable. That's pretty good, right? But the problem is the longer you play the game, the more likely you are to encounter frame stutters, frame drops. I have multiple examples here where even on the epic preset or on the high preset, I'm dropping down to 30 FPS, 22 FPS in some cases, out of nowhere for no apparent reason. Everything's fine. We're at 95 to 100 FPS. Everything's buttery smooth. And then out of nowhere, an enemy pops up on screen. Boom, our frame rate is starting to tank. It is absolutely awful. This happened at both native 4K as well as with DLSS. And even with DLSS enabled, the frame rate improvement is really just not that noticeable, and it's still equally inconsistent. With DLSS enabled to quality mode, we're looking at averaging a little over 100 FPS, but then at various times, we're still dropping down to 40, 50, and 60 FPS out of nowhere, just walking through the open world. The frame rate here is incredibly inconsistent, and there's virtually little you can do to actually get it to lock somewhere or be more consistent within a given range, like 90 to 100 FPS, 80 to 90 FPS. It will continuously fluctuate, and that's even on the latest and greatest hardware out there. Speaking of latest and greatest hardware out there, on my system, the game crashed on me not once, but 2 times. But additionally, I have a Discord member who has an Intel 13600K and the RTX 4090, and the game crashed on him a total of 5 times. I was in a Discord call with him as well as a few other of my Discord members, and we were all talking about this as it was going on. Another thing we noticed is the fact that the game does seem to run a little bit worse on NVIDIA hardware despite being an NVIDIA sponsored title, because again, one of my Discord members was streaming the game in Discord in a call we were in, and he has a 7900 XT. He did not experience one single game crash, and his frame rate seemed to be a little bit more consistent. And so something weird is definitely going on there. Now, with all of that being said, frame rate, frame consistency, frame time is all just one part of the equation. Another part of the equation is the fact that the textures look incredibly low res. This looks like an Xbox One game. Even though I'm playing it on PC in 2023 on the epic quality preset at native 4K, these textures do not look next gen, current gen. They do not look 4K or anything like that. Many aspects of this game looks like it was meant for the original Xbox One. That's how bad it looks in my opinion. And then on top of that, this game has terrible texture pop-in, terrible texture flickering and shimmering. There is just so much going on with the textures here. It does not make sense at all. It is a huge distraction. When you're talking about playing games in 2023, a word that is used quite often is a word called immersion. There is nothing that will break your sense of immersion more than a huge distraction, like textures popping in and out, like shadows flickering and shimmering all the time, like your frame rate randomly dropping 60 to 70 FPS at a time and then spiking back up out of nowhere. All these things break your sense of immersion. You can talk about how the game is missing certain features and how it might not just be good to play or fun to play or whatever. That's a completely separate topic. But here, talking about PC performance, you can't even remotely begin to enjoy the gameplay that is there because of all the performance issues. Talking about performance issues, something that is quite common these days is VRAM issues. This game is a VRAM hog. At native 4K on the Epic preset, we're at 14 gigabytes of VRAM usage. On the high preset, we're still at 14 gigabytes of VRAM usage. Turning on DLSS quality mode, which basically drops the resolution down to native 1440p, we're still at 13 gigabytes of VRAM usage. Overall, really no matter what you do here, you can do very little to have a noticeable impact on your frame rate consistency or on the overall VRAM usage. I didn't overly spend too much time going through trying to optimize the game because I was limited on time, and on top of that, it was quite apparent that this game just has overall performance related issues. In addition to all of that, using DLSS, it basically looked like Christmas on my screen because I kept seeing these red and green flickering lights. I was starting to freak out and I thought maybe my 4080 was starting to die because I thought it was artifacting from the GPU, but it turns out no, this is quite a common DLSS issue whenever it's not properly implemented into current AAA games, and that's exactly what we have here. Even enabling frame generation only slightly improved the overall frame rate, but then combined with DLSS, the overall image quality seemed significantly worse. I was able to notice it right off the bat. It definitely seemed like a visual downgrade. And so the overall implementation of DLSS, of frame generation, and how they decided to use it here is not adequate, and it definitely needs a patch, and I'm sure there's probably a patch coming somewhere along the lines. The game is simply just buggy. The AI is broken. There are multiple documented cases of this all over YouTube now. I experienced this myself, and the game crashes. The performance is inconsistent. Overall, I just do not recommend Redfall. And the thing that really sucks about all of this is the simple fact that I'm now getting requests from my community to talk about all the games that are breaking and what's going on, and should you even game on PC at all in 2023. And so I'm going to have to make a video talking about that, and Redfall will be one of the talking points in that video, amongst other things like Jedi Survivor and so on. Now, I ran a poll in my community before the game went live yesterday, and I asked the question, hey, are you playing Redfall? And the vast majority of you said no, and then I did get a few comments saying, yeah, I'm going to play it, but only because I already have Game Pass. And I will agree, if you're going to play the game, that is the only way to play the game. Do not spend money to play this game. Do not spend any extra money to play this game because it's not worth it. It's not worth $7. It's certainly not worth $70. I cannot believe they are trying to sell this game for $70. This is definitely highway robbery. I don't even know how this is legal at this point. So definitely don't buy the game. Leave a negative review for performance issues if you did buy the game, or refund it and get your money back. Let me know in the comment section down below. Are you playing the game? If so, how is it running for you? And other than that, thanks for checking out the video. Please hit the like button if you liked it. Subscribe if you're new. And until next time, E-Rock out.